Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very good. And you?
Baruch Hashem, very good. All right. Give it a moment for someone to log on. I know. I did. Okay, let's get started. Like that background?
Cool.
Okay. Shows we're doing something very huge and very cosmic here. We're not just learning some ancient words of the Talmud. We're doing something huge. All right. Let's start the Gemara. Page Chaf Daled Aleph. The top of the page, 4 lines down. So after we're done with the whole discussion of of Hanukkah. Now we're more dealing with, and we dealt with now but there's still one aspect of Hanukkah left over, and that's Yibayluhu. Ma'al v'haskir shel Hanukkah berachos hamazon. You put an insert of Hanukkah and berachos hamazon. You put that insert in. They mention al hanis and berachos hamazon, which we do, but the Gemara is here in the initials is trying to figure out, is that done or not? So on one hand, came in the Rabbanan who lo matkirin. Maybe you'll say, since Hanukkah is only a rabbinical holiday, lo matkirin, we're not going to mention it. It's not deraisa. Maybe only a Torah yomtiv deserves an insert in benching. Odoma perhaps mishum persumei nisa matkirin, or perhaps the mitzvah Hanukkah is so special that it deserves a mention because it's persumei nisa, it's publicizing nation. It deserves a insert in benching and berachos hamazon, despite the fact it's not rabbinical. The Amar Rabba says Amar Rav Schler in the name of Rav Schler, Amar Rav Huna in the name of Huna, Eina maskir. We don't say it. We don't do it. But if you did do it, you would mention in a haidah. It would go in. In other words, he's saying you don't need to. It's not a necessity, which obviously we don't pass in this way. We know we do say it, but we don't. It's not a necessity. But if you did mention it, the proper location for it would be b'haidah. Would be in noidelacha, the part of benching which is thanking Hashem, because that is a similar subject. It's a thanks of Hashem. It's not per se al anisim that we say that insert of Hanukkah is not a tefillah. It's not a prayer. It's more of a thanks of declaration of thanks to Hashem. So that's where it belongs. Rav Huna bar Yehuda ikla bei Rava. Rav Huna, the son of Yehuda, went to the house of Rava. Sabalat kur b'van Yerushalayim, and he felt, or he had in mind, he was about to mention it in the part of benching which talks about the binyan of Yerushalayim, the building of Yerushalayim. All right, so Amalu, he said to him, Rashesh said to him, Kitfila. I guess he felt to mention Boni Yerushalayim because that's similar to Yalav Yavod. And Amalu, Rashesh said to him, no, Kitfila. You have to mimic Tfila. You have to mimic like Al Hanisim is put into the actual prayer. Ma Tfila b'Hoidah, just like in Tfila, in the Shemon Esrei, the insert is in Hoidah, it's in Modim. You say it after it's saved by Modim when we thank Hashem, because again, This is not necessarily a prayer; it's more of a declaration of thanks to Hashem. So that's the proper location because it's a similar type of prayer. It's a similar type of prayer. And so too in benching, it will be in Haidah as well. It will be in Haidah, and therefore the proper location for the insert will be in Haidah, which we do put it there, the Al-Nisan. However, we don't. If one forgets it, the halach is, as we'll see in a moment in a brisa, if one forgets it, we don't have to go back and repeat benching again. As the Gemara itself says, "Eina masker," you don't need to mention it. But it is part of our benching formally. If you forget it, you don't have to go back. And the location for it, as you'll see in our benchers, is in Noidelecha, not like the insert of Yalav Yava, which is Bnei Yerushalayim, because it's similar to the prayer of Noidelecha, and they're both thanks to Hashem. Yibaylu. I want to ask you a question. Do I have to mention, now we're on the subject of inserts. What about Rosh Chodesh? Do we mention it in benching? Obviously we mentioned it in davening. We have a whole nother Musaf for Rosh Chodesh. But do you mention it in benching? And Tim say, maybe you'll say, if you're going to say on Chanukah, which only rabbinical, you don't have to mention it, but Rosh Chodesh is deraisa, Sarach. Rosh Chodesh is deraisa. Rosh Chodesh is a Torah concept. So maybe you would have to mention it. Oh, Dilma, or perhaps came into law, or maybe you'll say, listen, it doesn't deserve an insert. Because why? Because inserts in the benching are for days which are forbidden in work. Right? The Torah says you're not allowed to work on those days. That shows a certain prestige to the day. But Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh, you're permitted to go to work and do a malacha. So maybe it doesn't deserve an insert. How, even though, despite the fact Rosh Chodesh, there is minhagim not to work. There is minhagim brought down. Some women don't work on this day, but it's only a minhag. It's not the halacha. So therefore, maybe it doesn't deserve an insert. So that's the two sides of the scale. On one hand, it's better than Chanukah because it's deraisa. But the other hand, there's no isser malacha. There's no work being done on that day. There's no prohibition for work, so it doesn't show. We don't see that innate prestige of the day that it's asr by malacha. Therefore, maybe it doesn't deserve an insert. So Rab Amar Maskir, Rab says you do mention it. We do get a Yalavi of a mentioning. Rav Chanina Amar Eina Maskir, Chanina says you don't mention it. And Amar Zika, obviously we pass in like Rab, we do put it in our insert. Amar Zika Naka Rabidacha. Zika says take Rab in your hand. In other words, Rab is the main opinion. Dekai Rav Oshia Kwasi, because Rav Oshia goes like Rav Oshia was considered very authoritative. Rav Oshia was one who organized all the brises. And the Tani Rav Oshia brought a brisa that says Yom Sheishvim Korban Musaf Kol Rosh Chodesh V'Chol Shemayim. Days that have Musaf, any day which contains a Musaf in it, like Rosh Chodesh, Chol HaMoed, like Sukkot or Pesach, Arvis, Shachar, Mincha. When it's Ma'ariv, Shachar to Mincha, during those days, Mispal Shmon Esrei, you do 18 brachos. The Yomar Me'ein HaMa'ora, and it deserves this. Me'ein HaMa'ora means the mentioning of the day, meaning the specific specialty of the day, deserves a special insert, right?
That means occurrence in Hebrew.
Yeah,
occurrence, basically.
Right. So the occurrence of that day, in other words, a special insert of that day. Ba'avoida, you say it in Ritzei. Ritzei represents the Karbanos. The Karbanos. So you want to request this in the section of Karbanos in order that Hashem will return these the avodah of these particular days, that will be able to serve him the proper way in Yerushalayim. If you don't say it, we make you go back to Shemon Esrei. Right? You have to go back in the Shemon Esrei if you leave out the insert.
And Machzilim, they don't.
Oh, the mention we go back. You do go back. Again, it says you say this insert about the day in Avodim. It's say if you don't say it, you leave it out. You do go back. You have to go back. So this is, again, these are all days that have musaf, like Rosh Chodesh, Chol HaMoed. If you leave out the Yalav of these days, you gotta repeat your Shemon Esrei. However, there's no kiddush. Chol HaMoed, you don't do kiddush. Rosh Chodesh, there's no kiddush. It's not a day which is asur malacha. It doesn't have that prestige. You do kiddush on the day. And there is a mention in Berachos HaMazon. On Chol HaMoed, you mention Pesach, and Chol HaMoed, you mention Sukkot. Likewise, right? And Yamash and Shein Ben, and this is also what we're bringing this down for, because we see over here the Rosh Chodesh, which has Musaf, there's an insert in Berchas Hamazon, which is like Rav. That's the proof in this brisa. And Yom Shein Ben Musaf, Yon Sheni V'Chamishi, days which don't have Musaf, like Sheni V'Chamishi, Monday and Thursday, we'll speak on a moment what that is. But Tainus Mamados, in the days where they decree Tainus and Mamados, Sheni V'Chamishi, my Beta, asking Mara, what's Monday and Thursday? What's the special Monday and Thursday that you're telling me that this day doesn't have a Kar Musaf, so you don't make a mention of it? But what's Monday and Thursday? My Beta, what's going on those days? Elavigmar says, Sheni V'Chamishi, Beis Shal Tainus and Mamados. It means Monday and Thursday and Monday, there's 3 consecutive fasts that they do on Monday, Thursday, and the following Monday of certain fasts in the Maseches Tainus where they decreed if there's no rain, those are special days, and they read all these special parashas. Those days, even though they have a certain Yom Tov aspect to them, they don't have have any what were we saying over here? Those days do not have these mentionings in the Haskaras. They don't have any mentions and inserts or any of that sort. Okay, and Arvis v'shachas mincha mispal shmoneh. Arvis v'shachas mincha, you say Yudam shmoneh. Amar ema robe shmei tefillah. They will have some sort of insert in shmei tefillah that you mentioned the fast, I guess. You mentioned the occurrence of the day that you're praying for the rain to come in shmei tefillah. V'im lo amar, but if you don't say it there, ein machzir. So then you don't make him go back. Ve'ein ben maskar brachas, and they likewise do not have a mention. They don't have that insert. Those days of those fasts are not significant enough. But ultimately, what we're bringing this brisa down for is to see Rav Oshia feels that Musaf is the determination, a carbon Musaf is the determination of whether you have that insert or not in Shmones or the insert in benching. And if you do have a Musaf there, then you have to go back. And so you have to go back, at least in tefillah, but not actually. You don't go back when it comes to benching. But the point from this price is you see that you have an insert in Berchas Hamazon, which is like the opinion of Rav that there is an insert. Okay, but the Bryce, right again, the Bryce, it doesn't mention you go back if you forget the insert in benching, but it does mention there is an insert in the benching. Okay, the Rishonim do point out this Brysa could have been brought as a proof to the question above in the beginning of the Gemara. The Gemara wants to know, is there an insert in benching of Hanukkah for Al Anisim? And the Gemara says there is. You don't need it. We do it. But this Bryce over here clearly says that there would be no mention there because there is no Musaf when it comes to Hanukkah. So on Hanukkah, since no Musaf, they could have brought this as a proof. Many of the Rishonim point out for various reasons they didn't bring it, but this could have been some sort of level of a proof. Ibaylu asked the Gemara, Ma'al lahaski shel Hanukkah musafim. Does Hanukkah get an honorable mention of an instant Hanukkah in Musaf? When do we say Musaf on Hanukkah? On Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh Hanukkah is 8 days. It bumps into Shabbos automatically, maybe 2 Shabbosim, and also Rosh Chodesh Teves is in the middle of Hanukkah. So you're saying there's at least 2 days on Hanukkah that you will be saying a Musaf because of Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos. So that extra 4th tefillah of the day, does it deserve the honorable mention of Hanukkah there? So what's the 2 sides of the coin? Kevin Alesbe Musaf, maybe Kevin Alesbe Musaf Bididei Lomat Karinan. Perhaps maybe his Hanukkah doesn't deserve its own Musaf. Hanukkah is not significant enough to deserve that additional tefillah. Maybe that additional tefillah we say has nothing to do with Hanukkah, and we'll say without a mention of Hanukkah there. Oh, Dilma, perhaps listen. Yoim hu shechaya barba tefillos. This day, Shabbos Hanukkah, Rosh Chodesh Teves Hanukkah, is a day that requires 4 Shmona Esreis, 4 tefillahs. And therefore, since it happens to be Hanukkah, every single one of those prayers deserves a mention of Hanukkah. So do you go after the tefillah that one wants to look at the individual prayer, or do you look after the day? This is Hanukkah. If you look after the day is Hanukkah, then every tefillah during that day gets a mention of Hanukkah. Or do you go after the individual tefillahs? Does this tefillah have anything to do with Hanukkah? Right? Then that's when you say it. But Musaf, which has no connection to Hanukkah per se, then you would not mention it there. Those are the 2 sides of the coin. So the Machlokas, Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Rav Huna and Yehuda both together, they both say Eina Maski. Musaf does not get the mention of Hanukkah because Musaf is there only because of Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos, nothing to do with Hanukkah. But Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan and Shavai, they argue and say Masker. You do mention it, but you see the Rambam little number over there. We do hold like this. If you look in your Siddurim, you'll see in the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, you'll find an insert for Hanukkah. We do mention it, Masker. So Amar Abaye, Rav Yosef, Rav Abaye commented to Rav Yosef, Hadar Rehuna, Rav Yehuda, that of Rehuna, Rehuda, that said that Musaf doesn't get a Hanukkah insert because Musaf has nothing to do with Hanukkah. That is the opinion of Ravu. That actually is the opinion of Rav. Rav stated this idea in a different context somewhere else. The Amar of Gidol Rav. Rav Gidol Rav said, Rosh Chodesh shechalios b'Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh that fell on Shabbos. Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Right? The Hamafter b'Novi b'Shabbos ain't a sarach lahaskir sh'Rosh Chodesh. Someone who does mafter, so we know that there's a haftar, there's a mafter, and there's a haftar on Shabbos, obviously. And as you all know, that on Rosh Chodesh, and let's say that Rosh Chodesh fell on a Tuesday or Wednesday, or this week it fell on Thursday, last week fell on Thursday, we did not take out a Navi. We may have taken out a Sefer Torah, but we would not take out a Navi and do the haftarah there. We don't do Navi except on Shabbos. So if you're dealing with Rosh Chodesh, that's Shabbos, and you're taking out a Navi and doing the haftarah, right? Do you make a mention in the brachos of Rosh Chodesh? On one hand, today is Rosh Chodesh. It's a day of Rosh Chodesh. So maybe every tefillah and every insert deserves Rosh Chodesh mention. On the other hand, the haftarah is only coming because of Shabbos. Because Rosh Chodesh that wasn't on Shabbos wouldn't get a haftarah, wouldn't get a Navi there. So Rav comments, Rav Gidol Rav says, Rosh Chodesh shechalios b'Shabbos, hamafter b'Navi b'Shabbos in a sarach lahasik Rosh Chodesh. When you do the haftarah, the Navi on Shabbos, you don't mention in the brachos of the haftarah Rosh Chodesh. Why? Shelamali Shabbos, because if it wasn't for being Shabbos, a Navi b'Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh doesn't give a Navi. So this is exactly the opinion that we said before in regards to Chanukah, the opinion of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, because they all seem to agree to the same concept, that even though it's a day that deserved, that day is a day of Chanukah or a day of Rosh Chodesh, you look at the individual tefillah, the individual concept that we're dealing with there. If it's something which has no relevance to Chanukah, then you would have mentioned, likewise, we find by Rav, just like we find by Rav, that the Navi has nothing to do with Rosh Chodesh, even though the day is Rosh Chodesh too, you leave out the insert Rosh Chodesh in the haftarah. So the Gemara feels it's the same opinion of Rahun and Yehuda that you don't mention Al Hanisim in Musaf of Rosh Musaf on Chanukah. But the Gemara says that's not a good comparison. Me, dummy, it's apples and oranges. Hasam Navi with Rosh Chodesh like a cloud, because over there Navi has nothing to do with Rosh Chodesh. You'll never ever have a Navi on Rosh Chodesh. You'll never ever say take off Torah. So of course you don't mention Rosh Chodesh when you do the haftarah. But over here in Shmon Esrei, the concept of the tefillah of Shmon Esrei is relevant to Chanukah when it's Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. So therefore, the concept of tefillah has relevance to Chanukah, even though this particular prayer may be only coming because of Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, but the concept of prayer exists when it comes to tefillah, is relevant when it comes to Chanukah. So therefore, maybe it will deserve an insert by the Musaf because that type of prayer is relevant to Chanukah. Masha'en came, but when not the case when it comes to Haftarah, a Navi has no connection at all to Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, this is not a good connection. Rather, if you want to compare it to another concept, you compare it to this concept, Amar Rav Achluvi Rav, meaning the other statement of Rav Achluvi name of Rav, who says, Rav Masam Rav, the name of Rav, Yontiv Shechalios b'Shabbos. It's Yontiv and Shabbos. This year, this coming up Pesach, Be'ezras Hashem, we will have, well, actually, we won't have the Yontiv Shabbos. It's a Shabbos following the Yontiv. But if Yontiv and Shabbos come together on the same day, so Hamafter b'Navi b'Mincha b'Shabbos, when one does the Haftarah and Mincha and Shabbos, apparently in the ancient times in the Gemara, they had an interesting minhag, which we don't have nowadays. They used to actually do the Haftarah by Mincha Shabbos as well. That's something we don't have such a concept anymore. But in the olden days, in the times of the Gemara, when they did this, they made the Haftarah by Mincha. Hamafter b'Navi Mincha, when you do the Haftarah by Mincha, b'Shabbos ain't sarach l'hasik shel Yontiv. You don't mention in the prayer of the Haftarah the little prayer that you say Yontiv. So again, you're dealing with Shabbos and Yontiv, and Mincha over there, you're taking out the Navi. You only mention Shabbos there because why? Because even though it happens to also be Yontiv, and it should deserve a Yontiv mention, but the Haftarah has nothing to do with Yontiv. This is particularly for Shabbos. Shel Mali Shabbos ain't Navi b'mincha b'yontiv, because the one Shabbos is no Mavi mincha b'yontiv. So the Gemara feels this is a direct connection to the above discussion of Rav Huna and Rav. That just like we find Rav over here feels that even though it's a day of Yontiv and Shabbos, but it's a day of Yontiv, we don't give every prayer during the day a Yontiv insert. We look at the individual prayer, the individual tefillas. We don't look at the day. And therefore, you don't say by the Haftarah of Yontiv, of Shabbos, by Mincha, we don't mention a Yontiv insert. So too, it would make sense on Shabbos Chanukah or Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, when there's a Musaf, even though it's a day of Chanukah, you look at that individual prayer, which is only coming because of Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos, and you would not put a Chanukah insert in the Musaf, just like we find by this Haftarah on Shabbos Yontiv. And the Gemara concludes, the halacha is not like all the things that we spoke about above, and Rashi says like Rav Huna, Yehuda, Regil, and Rav. In other words, that the above mentioned opinions and all the context that says that we look after the particular prayer that you're saying, we don't look after the day. Rather, the halacha is you go after the day. If the day is Chanukah, every tefillah during that day deserves a Chanukah insert. If the day is Yontiv, every prayer during that day deserves a Yontiv insert. Yontiv insert. The Rashi seems to say we don't pass on like all the other opinions above that say this concept, but some of the Rishonim, Taisus and the Rosh and other Rishonim seem to say this wouldn't include Rev Gidol Amarab's statement, because Rev Gidol Amarab's statement about the Haftarah, the Mafter, the Navi B'Shabbos, and Rosh Chodesh over there, that they would seem to agree that the Haftarah of Shabbos Rosh Chodesh doesn't deserve a Rosh Chodesh mention, because Haftarah has nothing to do with Rosh Chodesh. But Rashi seems to say we don't pass on like all those opinions above. So therefore the halach is not like above, and rather, as we say in our explainer, the way we're saying right now, is you go after the day. If it's a day of Rosh Chodesh, right, every tefillah during that day deserves a Rosh Chodesh mention. If it's a day of Chanukah, every tefillah during that day deserves a Chanukah mention, despite the fact certain particular tefillahs of the day are not there because of Chanukah. That's the halacha. And you'll look in your Sidurim and you'll see that's the way it's printed in our local art scroll Sidurim. Ela ki hadamar of Yeshua ben Levi. Rather, halacha follows of Yeshua ben Levi. Right? Yom HaKippurim shechol lios b'Shabbos. Yom HaKippurim that fell out on Shabbos. Right? So you have Yom Kippur Shabbos. It's the only time you're going to be fasting on Shabbos. When Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos. Hamispalu ni'ila. When you daven that extra tefillah of the day called ni'ila. We know we have a fourth tefillah of the day. We have a fifth tefillah of the day called ni'ila. Right? It's just only they're special for Yom Kippur. So the question is, do you mention Shabbos in an Eilat prayer? On one hand, the day is also Shabbos, so it deserves Shabbos mention. On the other hand, that particular prayer of Nila is only coming because it's Yom Kippur. So Rav Shur ben Levi says, Sarach lahaskil shel Shabbos. Rav Shur ben Levi says you have to put Shabbos insert in the Eilah because Yomhu, look at the day. It's a day shenes chayav arba tefillos. The day is a day that's obligated in 4 tefillos. So, in 4 different tefillos, and therefore, it's really musaf for 4 tefillos, okay? Day that's obligated in 4 tefillos, and therefore, after the day is a day of Yom Kippur, is a day a day is also a day of Shabbos. So every prayer during the day, whether it comes because of Shabbos or not, gets a Shabbos mentioned there. So that's why we do not pass on like above. We pass on Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi is considered extremely authoritative. We almost always pass on Yeshua ben Levi. Parenthetically, in the Gemara Ksubas, which President Samshi, Yeshua ben Levi has a story recorded there that he was able to actually get into Gan Eden, heaven, alive. He's one of the only people recorded in history, among them Eliyahu Navi, who entered the Gan Eden alive. We'll see the story in Ksubas. I don't know if that has what to do with the fact we pass him like him, but he's considered extremely authoritative. Yeshua ben Levi, we almost always pass him like him. So that's what we do. We go after the day. Ask the Gemara, Kasha al Chasa al Chasa. I want to ask you a question on halacha and halacha. In other words, there is a different psak halacha in different places. Amrit hilchasa Yeshua ben Levi. You just got through saying halacha follows Yeshua ben Levi. That you go after the day. But b'kaimel halacha karab Rava. But we know we hold halachas like Rava. Rava says Yontif shechol b'Shabbos. Rava says Yontif that fell on Shabbos. It's Yontif and Shabbos together. Shliach Sibor ayori lefnei ateva. The Shliach Sibor who davens for the Amid, the Chazan, Arbis ain't sarach lahazka sheyontiv. By Ma'ariv, he does not have to mention Yontif. You know the tefillah that we say, Magein avois be'idvaroi, mechai mesim ma'amoroi. That tefillah we say, that tefillah does not need to mention Yontif. Why? Shelamali Shabbos, because it wasn't for Shabbos, Ein Shliach Siv Yored Arvis B'Yontif. If it wasn't for being Yontif, for Shabbos, I'm sorry, the Shliach Siva, the Chazan, wouldn't say that prayer there. Therefore, we don't mention Yontif. So we're saying, we see a statement of Rav, which he passed over here, that says when it's Shabbos and Yontif, that Magein Avos prayer that we say Friday night, we don't mention Yontif because it's particularly a tefillah for Shabbos. So this contradicts our other psak that we pass in Shmuel Levi, that we say we go after the day. Look at the day, don't look at the particular tefillah. So why over here are you looking at the particular prayer and saying this particular prayer is only a Shabbos prayer, therefore it doesn't get a Yontif insert? Look at the day. It's a Yontif day. So you should say, in the Magein Avos prayer, you should also mention Yontif there as well. So this is a stira in halacha. So the Gemara answers Hachi Hashta. So now, in other words, this is not a comparison. Hasam bedinhu dafil b'Shabbos namasarach. Because over there, that prayer, right? It's bedinhu. It makes sense that even on Shabbos we won't need to say it. That Magen Avos prayer is a special prayer that the rabbis enacted for a very specific reason. Rabbanan hu detakune mishum sakana. They enacted it. They made that prayer because of a sakana, because of danger to life. It used to be in the olden days, people used to go daven Friday night and out in the shows out there. And it was considered normally during the week they didn't daven out in the shows there. And sometimes people would come late, or sometimes people would lengthen in their tefillah, and we're afraid of those people remaining alone out in the woods where the shows were, and it would be a danger for them to come home alone. So therefore, we enacted an addition to the davening to lengthen the davening, in order that people who are praying later will have time to catch up and have someone to escort them home. So it's only because it's sakana, because of danger. So it's not a real tefillah. The rabbis enacted it as a side reason, not as a real prayer. So even on Shabbos, it doesn't really deserve to be said. So therefore, that's why, since on Shabbos it's not a real tefillah, it doesn't get a yontiv insert. Because even for Shabbos, it's not like an official prayer of Shabbos. It's an enactment the rabbis made because of a danger. So therefore, it doesn't deserve the yontiv insert. But also, when it's a yom, but a real tefillah, but a yom mushin is chai bar tefillos, if it's a day that's obligated in 4 tefillos, 4 real tefillos, and the day is a day of yontiv, let's say, then every prayer during that day gets that insert of yontiv, despite the fact maybe that particular prayer of the day is not a prayer that would be enacted for yontiv itself. So therefore, don't bring a proof from the Magen tefillah. That's like an extra tefillah the rabbis enacted. So ultimately, what the Gemara comes out with is look at the day. And if the day is a day which is also a different yontiv, every tefillah day gets that insert. All right, the Gemara goes further now, back to a totally different subject, analyzing the Mishnah. If you look back at the Mishnah on Daf 20b, Chafim Abayz, in the beginning of the Mishnah, end of the Mishnah speaks about a machlokus about, could you light Shabbos candles with cooked fat? So, I'm sorry, the first opinion of the Mishnah said you cannot light with fats. I guess fats don't light properly. And we're afraid that you might come to fix it on Shabbos or fiddle around with on Shabbos and violate Shabbos. So you can't light with animal fat on Shabbos. Nochim Amadi commented that you could light with cooked animal fat. Apparently, if it's cooked, then it lights well. And then the Chachamim afterwards comment that no, whether it's cooked, whether it's not cooked, you can't light. So you have 3 opinions. The first opinion of the Mishnah says you cannot cook with fat, which sounds like any fat. Nachum Amadi comes in and says cooked fat would be okay. And the rabbis say no fat, not cooked, not any cooked. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, is v'chacham hainu tanakama? The Chum is the same opinion as the first opinion. Both seem to say you cannot cook with any fats. So what is the third opinion here? That the Mishnah is presenting is if there's 3 opinions. There's really only 2 opinions. Answers the Gemara, Ika now. No, they seem to be saying the same thing, but there's really a difference in them. The idea of Reb Broin and Rab is the difference between them. Reb Broin and Rab before, and if you remember, 3 dafim ago, whatever it was, mentioned an idea of oils that are disqualified from lighting on Shabbos. Are you allowed to add in a little bit of good oil to help it out? Or maybe you're not allowed to, maybe the rabbis decreed, we're worried not to do it in that case to make a gzera. So are you allowed to wrap or put in good oil within the bad oil? Is that considered disqualified as well? So that concept is the difference between them. One of the opinions says no animal fat at all. You can't light with that at all. However, and another opinion will say you're not allowed to light with any animal fat, even cooked. However, if you put in a little bit of olive oil or good oil, it will be okay. So that would be the difference between them, even though they seem similar in that they don't allow any animal fats, even cooked. One of them will have a leniency to allow you to put a little olive oil in the fat, and that will help it light properly. But we, but we don't know which one says which. It's unclear which opinion is the lenient opinion. But that would be the difference between the opinions. So we have three opinions in the Mishnah. One opinion says that you can't light with any sort of fat, cooked, non-cooked, putting in a little bit of olive oil, nothing. Another opinion, the middle opinion, Achamonite, says you're allowed to light with cooked fat. And another opinion says, the third opinion says, you're not allowed with any fats even cooked. However, if you put a little bit of oil in, which helps to get it going, it's like, a little sparks it up, it makes it go well because of the olive oil, that would be okay. The Mishnah writes, Ein Malikin. The Mishnah writes, Ein Malikin b'shemen sefer b'yontiv. We've already discussed this idea somewhat. You are not allowed to light b'shemen sefer b'yontiv. This is truma that became tamei, right? Truma that became tamei. The halacha is you have to burn it. You're not allowed. A kohen is not allowed to consume it. However, the halacha does say that when you burn it, you're allowed to benefit from it. That's one of the halachas. A kohen who has tamei truma could put it in his candle, or he could put it in a cooking pot or under the fire to cook his food with it. You're allowed to benefit from it. You're allowed to benefit from it. However, the halacha is you cannot burn it on Yom Tov. We'll see in the Gemara. There's many sukkim that the Gemara darshans to explain why you can't burn it on Yom Tov. The burning has to be on a different day, not on Yom Tov itself. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Ein Malikin be'itron v'nikol. Shabbos says you can't light with itron. Itron is some sort of some sort of tar or something like that, pitch, but it's some sort of thing which is not covered Shabbos. It doesn't smell nice. That's not covered Shabbos on our Shabbos light. But that Chacham said no, it's okay. All oils. This is sesame seed oil, shemen agoizim, walnut oil, shnemen nois. This is radish oil. I don't know what that is. But b'shemen dogim and fish oil, b'shemen pakuos. Shemen pakuos, Rashi says this is some sort of pumpkin oil or gourd oil. I don't know what that is either. A gourd oil. Be'itron u'beneft. And you're allowed to light with itron u'beneft. Itron u'beneft. Neft is also, I think it's kerosene. It's some very foul-smelling oil as well. And Rav Tarfon Omer Ein Malikin al Hashem Zav Tarfon says no, you only light with olive oil, and this is the opinion that we try to follow, to light only with olive oil. It's not halacha. You can light with any oil you want nowadays, but you should always try olive oil. Ask the Gemara, my timer, what's the reason that you cannot light with shemen sefer b'yontiv? You're not allowed to light on yontiv this truma that's tamei. What's the reason? Why can't you light it? So you have to ask your question, like, what's the Gemara's question? You can't do malacha on yontiv. Of course you can't. So what's the Gemara's question? You can't do malacha on yontiv. So of course you can't light it. Besides for the mitzvah to burn it, of course you can't do that. You can't do any malacha on yontiv. And if you'll tell me, yeah, you're allowed to do malacha on yontiv. Malacha on yontiv is only for ochel nefesh. The Torah allowed you to cook on yontiv. It's only something for cooking. So the Gemara, but Rashi explains that the Gemara feels that there should be a concept called asidoicha loisase. That the positive commandment to burn the truma tamei or the kachim tamei should override the malacha on yontiv, alose yontiv. So the Gemara wants to know, my timer, what's the reason we don't light? You're not allowed to light shemen sreifa on yontiv. You're not allowed to burn truma tamei on yontiv or kachim that became tamei on yontiv. So the Gemara answers the fisha ain't sarfin kachim yontiv because you don't burn kachim on yontiv. Me, my time, where is these words from? No, where are these words from? Amar Cheskia says, the Chain Tanabei Cheskia, and also the Tanabei Cheskia says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, in reality, let me just reiterate that again. The Gemara starts off my time. What's the reason you can't burn Truma Tamei on Yontiv? Now, Truma Tamei, I'm sorry, there's nothing wrong with it. Truma Tamei, you should be able to burn it on Yontiv because you're allowed to use it. That's not a problem. You're allowed to use it on Yontiv, right? That could be Oichel Nefesh, somewhat. That could sum up the Eichel Nefesh, because you could use it for to read from, you could use it to cook with, to cook under, to use it for firewood. So the Gemara says the reason I can't do it is if Isha ain't surfing Kachim Yantiv. The reason is because we don't burn Kachim Yantiv, which Taisus explains that it's a Gzeira. It's a decree of Shabbos, it's a decree of just like you can't burn Truma Tameh, you can't burn Kachim Tameh, meaning Karbanos that became disqualified in the Beis HaMikdash, which are required to be burned, you're not allowed to burn them on Yantiv. We'll see in a moment. So we decree that also Truma that became Tameh, you also cannot burn them on Yantiv. It's really only a rabbinical decree, because in reality, what you're really not allowed to do is just burn Kachim that became disqualified on Yantiv. So we go or Geyser, we decree, and I think Rashi before said this as well. The Taisus mentions this. There is other opinions what the reason is, but the Gemara means ain't sarfin Kachim Yantiv. So again, my time, what's the reason Truma that became Tameh, I'm not allowed to burn it on Yantiv? Answers of the Gemara, Lefi ain't sarfin Kachim Yantiv, because I can't burn disqualified Kachim Karbanos that became disqualified. I can't burn them on Yantiv either. Minani Mili, where do we know these words from? That I'm not allowed to burn disqualified Kachim on Yantiv. In other words, Rashi explains, of course you can't burn it. So Rashi explains, because I might think you could burn it because the concept of Asay Doichalusi, a positive commandment of burning Kachim, should negate the negative commandment of Yantiv. So Amar Cheski, V'chein Tamne Becheski, Amar Kra, V'lo Sirmen al Becker. This is talking about disqualified Karbanos that became disqualified, and well, because you left over, you're not leave it over till the morning. So it says don't leave it over till the morning. When it leaves over till the morning, right? It says burn it. So that's a little bit redundant. You said don't leave it over till the morning, and if right, and then you spoke out, and if you leave it over until the morning, right, then burn it in the morning. Like, why do you mention the morning twice? You already said don't leave it until the morning, and then you should say burn it. Why does it have to repeat that and anoiser and leaves over until the morning, repeating the morning, then you burn it. You don't have to mention the morning again. Why does it mention morning again? So the Gemara understands it's coming to stress morning to mention that the burning happens on a different morning. The Torah is coming to stress that you don't burn it on the first day. In other words, the first day, which is Yontif, right? This is Yontif, leave it on until the morning. You don't burn it on the next morning. Rather, wait till the next morning after, which is not Yontif anymore. Boker Sheni l'sreifas, the second morning. So here we see that the Torah was makbid not to burn disqualified kachim on Yontif itself. You have to wait till after Yontif. And so, therefore, we're also learning as well that Truma Tameah, Truma, which is tithing, that the produce that you give to the kohen, which is holy, which is not karbanos, that became Tameh, you also don't burn it. You also don't burn it on Yontif itself. A decree because of this. Abai is a different opinion. You're allowed to burn Shabbos karbanos on Shabbos, but you can't burn the remaining Friday karbanos on Shabbos. Likewise, you can't burn the remaining weekday karbanos on Yontif as well. So we see over here that Yontif karbanos, that the karbanos that are going into Shabbos from the previous day are not allowed to be burned on the Shabbos or burned in the Yontif. So we can understand as well, also kachim, which became disqualified, also which are not relevant to the Yontif, you can't burn on the Yontif as well. Rava has a different opinion. Amar kahu levada yaslachem. Hu v'loy machshirin. It says on Yontif, what malacha are you allowed to do on Yontif? You're only allowed to do a malacha that you need to cook on Yontif. So we learn out from there, it says that it stresses the word hu. That alone you're allowed to do on Yontif. Just cooking, something necessary for eating. V'lo machshirin, but not the preparatory stage of the cooking. In other words, you can't make the utensils on Yontif to cook, make the knives, or make the spits, or the oven, or something of that sort. You can only actually do the proper cooking, not the preliminary, not the preparatory stages. Below Mila Shel Bizmana, we also learn out over here, you can't do Mila Shel Bizmana on Yontif as well. In other words, Mila that doesn't fall on the 8th day. If Mila falls, Bris Mila on the 8th day, you break the Shabbos, not break the Shabbos, you're allowed to do the Bris Mila on Shabbos or Yontif if it's the 8th day. But if it's not the 8th day, the Bris Mila, the baby had to be delayed, you don't do Bris Mila on Shabbos or Yontif. And then we learn out from here, it says, Hu levado yasa, only oichol nefesh, only food preparatory, only food Malachi ladun Shabbos, but not Mila, not a bris Mila, which is a violation of Shabbos or Yom Tov because you're drawing blood. That can't be done if it's not the 8th day. Da'asi b'kavachomer, because it would have been learned out of a kavachomer, which Rashi says what it is, but we don't do it on Yom Tov. So therefore, the on Yom Tov is not banana. Therefore, the Gemara's understanding as well, Rava's understanding as well, that you see over here that something which is not its time it's not the proper time for it, doesn't push off Yom Tov because bris milah, let's say the 9th or 10th day of the bris. So too we can understand as well that burning kachim tame, its proper time is not on Shabbos, it's not on Yom Tov. It's not a set time. Only things which it's that set time, that's where it's supposed to be done. It's the 8th day, you could break the Shabbos. But kachim that became contaminated, right? There's no particular reason to burn it. It's not pressing on that day per se, so you delay it, just like Mila, we would delay the next day as well. All right, so let's hold it over here. But all these opinions are basically stating why we don't burn disqualified kachim on Yom Tov. And the Gemara is understanding these are the same reasons as well. Either it's a gzeira, it's a decree, or the Gemara makes a connection that just like you can't do on Yom Tov, you can't burn disqualified korbanos on Yom Tov. Likewise, truma that became contaminated, you wouldn't be able to burn on Yom Tov as well. Okay.
Where did we end, Aaron?
We ended at the bottom of the page, Rav Ashi, the bottom line on Chav Daled base. Rav Ashi.
Okay.
Okay. Yashikoach. All right. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Here, Michael.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Hey, you too.
Mhm.
Bye.